Tom, thank you so much. It's 9:25 right now, and part of the mission of the Virginia War Memorial is to preserve the past. And at a time when we're losing our heroes from World War II at a rapid rate, there's an event coming up that will help honor and preserve the legacy of two military men. Jim Treisler, Virginia War Memorial Director of Education, joins us to talk about this event coming up later this month. Jim, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Nice to see you, Greg.
Nice to see you. First of all, Howard Baugh and George Bland, tell us who these guys are. Just fascinating characters.
Well, the challenge, is both of these men are deceased now, and it's how do we maintain their legacy? They were great role models, great Virginians. Howard Baugh from Petersburg, George Bland from Richmond. How do we use their story to inspire people today? And what you find is Howard Baugh was a Tuskegee Airman, flew 135 missions. A real war hero at a time when many pilots, many flight crews were flying under 50 missions, which, one mission is enough for me personally. But, to be asked to stay on as a Tuskegee Airman, to fly, more than double the missions of a traditional white soldier, or white pilot, white, crew, air crew. The Tuskegee Airmen were asked to go way above and beyond. So his story is a great one of heroism. And George Bland, U.S. Navy. He's on the West Virginia. He's there that morning. He said it was a calm, quiet morning. He was up on deck, and the Japanese airplanes come and attack at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. George talks about a loud explosion. He went deaf. He said it bothered him the rest of his life. It was the USS Arizona that had blown up nearby. He's trying to abandon ship. He swings on a rope over to the Tennessee battleship, and fire everywhere. It's just an amazing story that both of these men experienced.
They have passed on?
Yes, they have.
How are we remembering them at this event?
Well, what's fantastic is both of their sons have really continued their father's legacies. I had the honor of meeting both of their dads, and the sons were always there supporting their dads, making sure their dads got where they needed to be to share those stories. And now that their fathers are deceased, it's a great time for Captain Baugh. He worked in the airline industry. He's the current president of the Howard Baugh chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen down in Petersburg, which is named for his father. And he's going to be coming and sharing that story. Frank Bland is George's son. Frank was an employee with the federal government, worked at the Smithsonian for a little while, and was also a military veteran. And Frank's going to come and share that story, more about his father's legacy.
Jim, you're an educator. How are sharing stories, how does that help the legacy of these men? How does it help breathe life into their stories?
Well, Tom Brokaw said it was the greatest generation, and the more I read and the more I hear and the more I interview people from that generation, I'd have to agree with him 100%. These men and women lived through extraordinary times, and it's important that we learn from their stories because they're terrific role models for us, as difficult times approach. I've had students in the past, when I was a teacher, share with me that their father or their brother were off serving in the Middle East, and they said when they would meet a World War II veteran, it gave them strength to understand that, wow, they got through difficult times. We're going to get through it also.
Inspiring them even 70 years later.
Yes, sir.
It's amazing. So
yes,
these
sir.
guys had to come back and sort of fight racism as well.
Definitely, definitely. Howard Baugh told a story. A lot of us don't realize that Italian, German POWs were here in the U.S. during the war. We had a tendency to give them, in some locations, a little more freedom than your average POW. And Howard told a story that a German POW was able to go into restaurants here in Georgia because of the color of his skin, but Tuskegee Airmen would come back and find, as American heroes who had flown missions in combat for us, that they were unable to go into the same restaurants, again because of the color of their skin. What's amazing is that these men did what they felt was right. They fought for their country. They fought for, what they believed in. Martin Luther King made a comment that our founding fathers had given us a blank check, and it was time for us to cash in that check. Well, men like Howard Baugh and George Bland worked really hard for their nation and to do the right thing, hoping that the nation would sort of catch up as far as equality and rights and recognize people based on their ability.
And folks will have an opportunity to hear these stories from the men who knew him best, their sons. And the Virginia War Memorial is open for business during construction, right?
We are open. Don't let those cranes bother you.
No.
Come on in. All of our exhibits are open, and we have lots of great programming, all free as part of the Department of Veteran Services.
Just like this one right here, Our Fathers Fight for Freedom is Saturday, February 17th, coming up at the Virginia War Memorial at 2 o'clock. And I do have the pleasure of serving as MC for this fantastic event. It's a free one. Get down there and listen. We're going to put a direct link on our show's website by early this afternoon at WTVR.com/VTM with all of the details. Jim, keep up the great work.